Lab Coat, the podcast that undresses scientists. I'm Elodie Chabrol and I can't wait to take you with me to meet the humans behind the research. We will of course talk a little bit about science, but we will mostly talk about them. And welcome to this new episode of Under the Lab Coat. Today I'm chatting with Magaret Sivapragasam, biotechnologist and science communicator. Hi, Magaret.
Hi, Elodie. How are you?
Good. I'm really happy to talk to you today because I've met you on Twitter. You were talking about makeup and science, and I participated in that. We're going to talk more about that a bit later. But after that, I was really thinking, okay, I need to have her in my podcast. So thank you very much for saying yes. And I can't wait to hear all the stories you're going to tell us. We're going to start, I'm always saying with the lab coat on. I'm going to ask you later if you wear one or not. But let's start with the virtual lab coat on. And can you tell us what is your research about?
Yes, so I started off doing a PhD in biotechnology, and for the past 8 years, I've been working on a designer solvent called ionic liquids. So I find this so cool because this solvent is actually termed to be the solvent of the future, and it can absolutely do anything that you want it to do. So basically, it's like combining a property of A and property B, mixing it magically in the lab, and getting it to do anything you want to do. So in my previous workplace, we worked on cleaning up oil spills in rivers in Malaysia. And so we made this liquid behave the way we wanted it to do while like increasing its efficiency and also reusability. So I'm really excited. In fact, I still have an ongoing research in Malaysia where I've received grants from the UK government as well as the Malaysian government to study this magical liquid.
But what does it do? Okay, I'm geeking about it because it's so cool. So when you have the solvents in front of like oils and that kind of thing, is it dissolving it or what is it doing?
So based on its property, you can either get it to dissolve whatever you want it to dissolve, or you can get it to capture. So in the case of my current research, we made it behave like a sponge. So what this liquid does is it kind of absorbs oil and keeps it with it. And then we also work on methods to detach the oil from this sponge.
Wow. Okay. So basically, when there is an oil spill, you can drop it and it's going to like clean the sea or the lake or whatever kind of like place it needs to be.
Exactly. And this is only one of the potential application of ionic liquids. There's thousands of application of ionic liquid all over the world, which is going on now. And research about ionic liquids is just like, if anything, is just increasing. And they've been used in space studies. They've been used in renewable energy and so many other applications. So I do see a tremendous future for this solvent. And I'm just so happy to be part of it.
It's amazing because you're a biotechnologist. So, it always feels like it's biology, but actually you're reaching out to all the different domains with the solvent. So it could be climate help, like a spill of oils. It could be a lot of different things. So it's really cool, to hear about such a domain that reaches out to so many different things around. It's not just like biology, it's like almost everything.
Yeah, I guess that's the cool thing about biotechnology. In fact, maybe later on I could tell you a story on why, in fact, I accidentally chose this field.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but that's the cool thing about biotechnology, because I always think that for me, who started off doing science, not having one direction in mind, I was just all over the place. I love animals, I love plants, I love to study about medicine. So I thought biotechnology was like it happened to be a very nice mix of all of this different studies. So I'm happy that I did this course.
Okay, yeah, I want to discuss that. You didn't have to choose. So you're working on very different things. So thank you for telling us what your research is about. Now, the question is, do you wear lab coats in the lab when you do research?
Oh, yes, because we deal with a lot of chemicals and also some living organisms at times. So yes, I have to wear the lab coat, even sometimes more than the lab coat. We have so many other PPEs that we use, like goggles and like breathing apparatus. So yes, definitely lab coat for sterile purposes.
So PP is personal protective equipment, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so it could be like overalls, like stuff you put on your hair, over shoes, or that kind of thing. Yeah, sometimes,
Yes,
like,
definitely.
yeah, I worked with viruses and we had like, 2 layers of everything.
Mm.
So when it's in summer and it's really hot in the thing, you're basically like cooking yourself, like steam cooking yourself inside. You're
Yes.
like, oh, it's gonna be amazing at night when I'm gonna take the tube back home and I'm gonna
Mm.
smell really, really good. Okay, so you have lab coats, you have even other things. So now let's remove this lab coats and talk about you. So you teased us about how you ended up doing what you're doing accidentally. So is research something you always wanted to do where you were a kid? What you were you dreaming about? Like what was your we always have like that job we want to do as a kid. Was it research? Probably not.
Yes, you're right. It was
Yeah.
it was not definitely not doing biotechnology. It was interesting actually because I started off being exposed to science at a very young age. I was just a very curious child. In fact, I would like irritate my parents so much by asking them so many questions about like why,
Yeah.
just because I wanted to get answers to everything. And I did enjoy like, watching science documentaries, like watching, nature programs. And then I realized that why was I doing this so much? It's always because I always wanted answers to everything.
Yeah.
But then life worked out its way into me wanting to do medicine. It's funny because back, I'm talking about like 20 years ago.
Yeah, so high school?
Yeah, yeah. Maybe even after high school. Yes, you're
Yeah.
correct. In Southeast Asia, where I'm from, it's such a stereotypical ideology to, only, of course, this is 20 years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah, yeah.
I'm sure things have changed now, but back then, you were only considered successful if you were either a doctor, lawyer, or engineer.
Okay.
It was funny because, these three occupations somehow showed people around you that, oh, you have made it in life.
Yeah.
So I kind of grew up with that ideology, thinking that, oh, I must be one of these three in order for me to be, a respected member of society. So I went on wanting to do medicine.
Okay.
Medicine was just something known, everybody knows what a doctor does,
Yeah.
what a medical doctor does. So I went out starting my foundational year wanting to do medicine. And this is the story actually I've never shared on any platform before. But yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I
exciting.
started off doing wanting to do medicine, and lo and behold, I did not make it for medicine because I was short by 4 points.
Oh no.
Yes. So there was a cutoff point from when you move from your foundational year to the pre-med program, sorry, the degree program, and I was short of 4 points. And I appealed
Okay.
for a remark and everything, but did not make it.
Was it a domain in particular that was short of, like, was it some
So
like
yeah, so back in my previous university, it was like a cumulative point system. So you would have to like
okay.
plus all of the scores from some science subject, maths and English, whatnot, and then it would be a cumulative mark. So out of that
Okay.
cumulative mark, I was short for 4 points. So I asked
Wow.
for a remark, a reappeal, and did not make it. So I was devastated at that moment because thinking that, oh, now I'm not going to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. I'm just, fake, going to be like, this is it for me. Never going to be a respected
Yeah.
member of society.
I'm
Yeah,
a
yeah, it's
failure.
like a failure, true. And then I was so upset. I didn't want to think a lot about it. And I just thought that, I'm just going to do whatever the university has to offer. So the university did offer biotechnology at that point.
Okay.
And it was interesting because at that point, I did not know what biotechnology is about. I
Yeah.
knew I liked biology.
Yeah.
And I was so mad that I did not even like go through the internet or like ask people what biotechnology is about. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to do whatever and like just become whatever just because I did not make it to the medical program.
Yeah.
So I started off doing biotechnology, and it was really interesting. And fast forward like 10 years or 20 years down the line, I always recommend people to do biotechnology in case if they come up to me and say, so I after that I worked and taught in a university for about 5 years, and I would tell my students that in case you don't know what to do,
Yeah.
like you don't know what branch of science you want to do, like biotechnology is your thing because you kind of study a little bit about everything.
Yeah.
So that worked out fine. And yes, so that's how I moved into liking the concept of research
Yeah.
and then thinking that medicine is what I should do, and then not getting medicine, and then finally loving biotechnology.
And when did you decide to do a PhD? So sorry, too many questions at the same time. So where was it? You said your university. Where was it?
My university was in Malaysia.
Okay, amazing. Did you do your PhD in Malaysia?
I did. So after my biotechnology degree, I interned doing animal science for a bit in a veterinary lab,
Okay.
which I loved. And after that, I went on seeking for a government scholarship to do my PhD.
Okay.
So again, at that point, did not know what I wanted to do for my PhD, and I just grabbed the first scholarship I got.
Okay.
So I did a PhD in downstream processing,
Okay.
which is I basically spent a few years studying how to shorten processing time for large scale drug processing.
Okay.
So this is something pharmaceutical.
Yeah.
It was a very different area. I did not necessarily like it in the beginning because it involved a lot of engineering concepts that I necessarily did not learn about in biotechnology. So the initial stages was me doing a lot of studying, reading textbooks, doing like picking up maths and calculations again.
Ooh.
But it was a good learning curve because every day, I face a different challenge in the lab
Yeah.
that I've never, don't know anything about. So it was an interesting journey. It was also a very difficult journey
Okay. Yeah.
because PhDs are, I'm sure you would know yourself. It's a very lonely journey. It's not lonely in the sense that you don't have friends, but it's
No.
lonely in the sense that you alone know what you're going through, if you know
Yeah.
what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird because you're not independent yet, but you're kind of independent, but you also have a director and it's your own project. So it's really weird. It's a weird time in life.
Exactly.
It's like
Everything you just said.
yeah, it's like being an adult but a kid at the same time because you're only a PhD student, but you're also a researcher, like a junior researcher, but you're both sides of the thing. So you're also like you're independent and a kid at the same time. So it really feels weird.
I think you absolutely nailed that part. I think that a kid and you're a kid. I used to think that I was such a child, but I was making very grown up
Yeah,
decisions like
exactly.
how to purchase this vial. Like I don't know which vial or which tube it's supposed to be. So yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. Who left me in charge?
Yes. So I guess the nice thing about the PhD is it just really matures you so fast,
Yeah,
and you become somewhat of a different person after the PhD.
yeah,
And I did sit down, many times and analyze who I was going into a PhD and post PhD the person I have become. And after 1 year during my PhD, I sat down and understood the struggles I went through and why I went through what I did and the outcome of it. And I found that was such a beautiful experience because you go through what you go through at that point,
yeah,
not knowing what to buy, making, adult decisions in such a short frame. But after that, you realize that, oh, this growing up that you did in this 3 or 4 years is so valuable. And I
yeah,
don't think any phase of part of research actually gives you that amount of maturity in such a short time.
yeah,
So I think doing a PhD really changes you as a person. It really improves you. It gives you so much values, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see a growth of a person pre and post PhD.
yeah, definitely. And so you did a PhD wanting to do research, or you did a PhD because you liked the subject?
I did a PhD wanting to do research.
Okay,
I did not necessarily like the subject I was in.
okay,
That's why I switched fields after I finished my
yeah.
PhD.
So you went for a postdoc after that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Where did you do your postdoc?
So I did my postdoc in an oil and gas firm
Okay,
that came with a grant, and we were just working in a grant to
okay,
to kind of reach certain milestones that the grant had already predetermined before I even joined. So we're just working along the project, basically hitting off deliverables of the project. But yes, that is where I was introduced to that super cool liquid thing that I was sharing earlier, and I thought it was so interesting. That was so nice, and also very stressful at the same time because when you're working with a grant with like a specific end date, there's just so many targets that you have to fill,
yeah.
and papers and outcomes and but it was good. It was all good.
Yeah, postdoc is a different kind of hell, a very special kind of hell, because we're always saying, oh, you grow up a lot during your PhD, and then you're independent, and you have another kind of like stress in postdoc. But it's amazing to do research. So you did your postdoc in a oil company, still in Malaysia.
Yes, still in
Okay,
Malaysia.
I'm asking because now you're in the UK, so I'm like,
Yes,
at
yes.
one point did that happen? So you were working on that solvent. What happened after?
So after 4.5 years of working in the oil and gas firm, the grant
Mm-hmm.
finished. So, and then I applied for a teaching position because somewhere along the line of working in the oil and gas firm, I realized that because I did not know about this cool solvent called ionic
Yeah,
liquids that I mentioned earlier, you know, pre-joining this oil and gas firm. So when I joined this, I realized that I wanted to share about this to everyone.
yeah,
And I realized, why is anybody else wanting to do that? Because here you are making super cool things in the lab. I'm literally creating something novel every single day. But yet, why is anybody wanting to talk about it? And that actually really bothered me. It
okay.
made me like so upset. Like, why aren't you like talking about this or sharing about this? Papers aside, like
Yeah,
academic journals
yeah,
aside. But
obviously.
I want to tell my mom, like I want to tell my dad. Like, somebody has to know what this thing does. So I started this thing on my own initiative in the oil and gas firm, something called Let's Talk Over Tea.
Oh,
And I made everybody come for a tea session.
nice.
Yeah, so I served tea, and everybody came, and let's just talk about this. Let's tell me something about your research, or tell everybody about your research. And at that point, I did not know what I was doing was actually a branch of psycho.
Yeah, it is psychom. It's what I was thinking. I was like, this is psychom, definitely.
Yes, I did not know because I was so, bottled up in the lab and they cooped up the lab. I was so oblivious of what everything else is
Yeah,
happening around me. So when I started this, people started coming up. Of course, tea was also a good pull factor to kind of
yeah,
have some biscuits, have some tea, and people started talking about their research or even anything else they wanted to share, which is interesting. And I started realizing people were telling it in a story-like manner,
yeah,
or they were making a joke about it. And that was really interesting. And then this initiative went on for a few years, in fact, while I was there. And then the grant finished and I moved on to teaching, and I joined a university in Malaysia as well,
okay.
teaching biotechnology. And yeah, that was the best 4.5 years of my life, I think, because I realized that I liked communicating science via teaching.
Yeah,
And then I also realized teachers and lecturers who teach in science are actually science communicators
yeah,
themselves.
yeah,
Yeah, because you're teaching students who may or may not necessarily, depending on the year, I guess, may not necessarily not know about a certain concept. And I used to teach quite technical subjects, and I took it upon me every day to make something like that a story, or
yeah.
into a video, or into a joke, even into a song.
Wow.
And yeah, we did. I used to teach animal breeding, and we used to sing songs.
Oh my
We
god, this is
used to,
amazing.
yeah, we used to do plays. We used to do like charades. And I realized that, oh, what I'm doing subconsciously is also science com.
Yeah,
And again, with any institution, I'm sure here or anywhere else in the world, while also, apart from teaching, you also need to kind of, be active in doing research and stuff.
yeah,
So I started applying for grants in the field of ionic liquids.
yeah.
So I obtained a grant from the UK government, also obtained a grant from the Malaysian government, and also started recruiting my own postgrad students.
Hmm.
And apart from teaching, I also did research. So that went on for about close to 5 years.
Yeah,
And then I told myself that since I like science
yeah.
comm so much,
Plot
uh,
twist.
yes.
Okay.
And I also was involved in the science communication unit in the Malaysian National Academy of Sciences.
Wow.
So I was
Okay.
also, working with them on the side. So I was like, oh, since I like it so much, I kind of want to be certified
Yeah,
in this field.
yeah.
And yes, so one Thursday afternoon, I just told myself that, oh, I think I want to be a student again.
Okay. So you applied for the master in Bristol, right?
Yes, I applied for a master's in science communication at UWE Bristol.
Yeah.
And yes, it has been close to a year that I'm here now,
Yeah.
almost done with the course and working on my dissertation at the moment. So that is my whole life story summed up.
Oh, it's amazing. So, two questions. What is your dissertation about? Is it the
Mm.
makeup thing?
Yes,
So,
yes,
can
it
you
is
tell us
the
more about it? Because I found it genius. I saw it on Twitter and I was like, this is an amazing subject. And I actually can't wait for you to finish it and like send it to me so I can read it.
Yes. So I'm working on perception of makeup application among women science communicators.
Yeah.
I'm studying whether does it have an effect in the way people perceive female science communicators, and also trying to understand why women science communicators wear makeup. Is it a form of a code switch, or is it just to for personal satisfaction? So almost done with my data collection, and I'm currently working on analysis. So it's really interesting. I absolutely love this topic. In fact, if I may share, the
Yeah.
reason I've get this question, I got this question a lot, like why did you even choose this topic and like what
Yeah.
inspired you?
This
Yeah.
was my next question. So, this is
Okay.
good.
Okay.
Perfect.
So it's actually interesting, and it's also a personal story because growing up, when I was, I would say about 14 to about 17 years old, I was bullied, severely bullied,
Oh, no.
actually. Yeah. In fact, in Southeast Asia, a lot of people are very obsessed and they kind of make it a point about skin color
Okay.
and somewhat. It's a sad phenomenon though. What actually happens and what actually happened.
Yeah.
I would say that it's still happening in very prevalent in a lot of countries. I would say, and it actually took a huge toll on me
Yeah. I can
because I
imagine.
was bullied for something which is out of my control.
Yeah.
And I did not understand it at that point. I was like, oh, what does being tan mean? And what does being light skinned mean? And it all stems from an ideology that tan means dirty
Okay.
and white means clean.
Okay.
You
Great.
know,
Yeah.
when people show you black and white, dirt is usually in a darker tone. If you look at it logically,
Mm-hmm.
dirt is usually a darker tone. And so people tend to put this together. And in certain parts of Asia, it becomes a status of a symbol of status.
Yeah.
It becomes a symbol of how pretty you are, how beautiful you are, how smart you are. And it in some cases it wasn't. And sadly, that was what happened to me. And a lot of things happened, when I was bullied, and I did not understand why was this happening to me
Yeah.
at that point. And over the years, I was trying to understand why is physical looks so important
Yeah.
when you're trying to have intellectual conversations, or even if you're trying to be someone's friend.
Yeah.
So since then, that thought has always been on my mind. And even when I was working during my postdoc, I used to put on makeup. I used to wear makeup to the lab.
Yeah.
And even when I was not wearing on my lab coat, I used to put on a full face of makeup, and
Yeah.
I used to, wear matchy clothes and earrings and do my hair.
Yeah.
And I had actually a few of, I wouldn't say a few, maybe more than 10 times, people would come up to me and say that, why do you look like that? You're in the lab. And I would say that, what do you mean? I
Well,
was like, why do you need, this? Why is your lips red?
well.
And then a few times people actually said some, very hurtful things of like, oh, you don't look as though you belong in the lab.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've got that
Yeah.
one. You don't look like a researcher. Yeah.
And I asked them, how do you think I should look then? And then, I thought the question was sarcastic, but they thought otherwise. And they went on answering me. It's like, oh, you should be like, how this person looks, or how, and they would point out to somebody who's got like, baggy clothes and pants. It's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm never judging anybody who wears whatever they want to do or look however they want to do. But that person, kind of assume people who do science should never have, a face on,
Yeah.
or should never wear like figure hugging clothes or matching clothes, or God forbid earrings.
Yeah.
So after a few, several times of getting this again and again and again, I got so annoyed.
Yeah. I
So
can imagine.
I put it out on Twitter, saying that I started this hashtag scientists can wear makeup several years ago.
Yeah.
And it got a little bit of media traction, and got people interviewing me from local newspapers asking me to share my story.
Yeah.
So I did. And then I had a lot of people reaching out to me on Twitter saying that they have gone through the same thing. And there were stories about how supervisors, don't treat their students who wear makeup
Yeah.
or differently, thinking that they're not serious enough to do science.
Yeah.
So it was just because of that situation, and also the story about me being bullied. I always had this thing that I kind of want to prove to everybody that, look here, this is not the way you should treat anybody, let
Yeah.
alone women or anybody in that matter. And whatever somebody puts on their face or how they want to portray themselves does not reflect what's in their brains,
Yeah.
or does not reflect what, the quality of the science they're doing, or does not reflect what comes out of their mouth.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, how am I going to prove this
Yeah.
if it's not through research? Because as scientists, I mean, broadly speaking, a scientist is defined as a person who takes data, who takes hypothesis and proves it,
Yeah.
let alone in the lab or not even in the lab. But so I was thinking to myself that, okay, I have this background of, being able to do research. I've worked in a lab. So I want to put all of these skills that I had over the years and try to understand, why did people treat me a certain way back in high school?
Yeah.
And why did so many people say this to me when I had a full face of makeup and doing work, which I did, good work, And then, so I thought that, this is a perfect opportunity to get data,
Yeah.
like legit data from people all around the world, and try to analyze this data and then go on writing a thesis and, a publication later on if everything works on well. So that's the whole story of why I decided to do this. So I'm just trying to make this scientific enough to prove a point to everybody that this is not the way you treat people.
Yeah, I think this is good. We shouldn't have to prove anybody, but I think it's good that you do, and I find it really interesting because in the lab I've got the same experience. Like, you don't look like a researcher. You are not looking scientific enough wearing lipstick. It's not okay. And this is what I'm trying to do with this podcast, actually, to show that you don't have one kind of scientists. You have lots of kinds of scientists.
Yes.
It's not just the white dude with gray hair around 60 with glasses and a lab coat. It could be anyone. Anyone can be a scientist. And I love all the different people I get to talk. So it's amazing what you do. Are you going to publish the thesis somewhere?
We're working towards it.
Okay.
We're definitely working towards it. Hopefully in a few months.
Okay.
Definitely that'll be something out there.
So what I'm going to do anyway, in the description of the podcast, I'm going to put your Twitter account, maybe your LinkedIn as well, so people can follow you. And I'm assuming you're going to share it on social media when it's online.
Yes, definitely.
So if you're interested to know, it's really an amazing subject. It's sad it's coming from so, dark places, but it's amazing you're doing that. And this is part of your master in science communication then?
Correct. Okay. It is part of the 1.5-year course at UWE Bristol.
So it's almost over. How was it to be back as a student?
Oh, it was so confusing at first. Because when I entered the classroom, my subconscious told me to just go in front and use the laptop and put my slides on. But I had to be so conscious. It's like, no, you're sitting on the other side now. Yeah. And I was like, oh, why do I need to take books and write? And so the first class was just so confusing.
Yeah.
But I guess after a certain period, it just happened to be quite a natural thing. And the lectures here are brilliant at UWE Bristol. They made it it's so much of respect given and respect taken kind of situation.
Yeah.
Where they did not necessarily treat everybody like there was not an instance that they treat you as students. It's more like, I'm helping you, assisting you to learn. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was just really very, very a very good approach. So it was easy for me. It was easy for me to have a discussion with my supervisor and my lecturers. So it was very nice.
Especially, I feel like those masters, you have a lot of people that are master level, but you also have people that did something else and that go back to science communication. So scientists sometimes. So it's probably not a level of just masters. It's lots of people from lots of different places.
Yes, you're right. Yeah. There were others. There are quite a mix of a good mix of different types of students in the class. Like what you said, there are people with PhDs, there are people with masters already. Some of them degree backgrounds, but yes, it's a good mix of different fields of biology, science, chemistry, physics. So it was quite nice.
I'm going to put the link in description as well, so people can find out more about this definitely. Master. So you're almost with the master. What's the plan after that?
Good question.
What are you going to do when you're going to grow up, Never growing up, never.
Yes. Um, One thing I know, I love to do research.
Okay.
So whatever I do after this would definitely involve a heavy amount of doing research. So by choice, I would not like to go back to the lab
Okay.
because I think I've done the lab bit, and I want to move on from being in the confined in a lab space. So I do want to do more research in science comm. I definitely want to go back teaching. So yes, for now, that's the plan, teaching and research in science comm.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm going to put the links to follow you and see what's the story
Mm,
becoming after. Follow you and know more about what you're doing after. Wow, thank you. It's already almost 30 minutes of podcast. So I think you explained everything. It's really good. I'm loving this. So now I would like to talk about your hobbies. Do you do stuff outside of the lab? So you're living in the UK now,
yes.
in Bristol. What do you do outside of the lab? What is the thing?
So it's also different because it's also interesting because my hobbies changed when I moved here. Because
Yeah.
back in Malaysia, I used to volunteer a lot in an animal sanctuary. I used to spend a lot of my time every weekend in an animal sanctuary in Malaysia.
Yeah.
But since coming here, I found myself liking to cook a lot. I
Okay.
like trying out recipes. Also because countries from different regions have like completely different produce.
Yes. Yes.
So it's really interesting, like experimenting with the produce here in the UK and like trying to adapt it. Can I make it Malaysian enough? Using something from here and like making it into a Malaysian type of cuisine. So I've been very happy doing that. I try to travel around the UK because
Yeah.
it's just really pretty here, and I spend my time like just taking walks and being more aware of nature and being more, I'm just observing everything, which is quite nice. I do enjoy writing.
Okay.
I run a Facebook group.
Yeah.
I write about like debunking myths and misconceptions in science,
Yeah.
like short snippets of things in science. So I enjoy doing that.
I've seen you were part of a book, a science book about like a science poetry
Yes.
book.
Oh yes, that was a review that I did for for a person who wrote a book, which is a brilliant book, by the way. That was just a little bit of a review that I did. But yes, about the book, yeah, we did also launch. I also wrote a book, a training for trainers about science communication, the use of science communication in social media.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that was a book that I wrote for the National Academy of Sciences. But yeah, just spend my time reading, writing, and I think cooking takes a lot of my time, but I do love it. I do love it. It's intentional use of my time. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
I understand you totally. I spent my last bank holiday Monday, so end
Mhm.
of August, I spent 4 hours trying to make pasta for the first time, and I was
From scratch.
from scratch, and I was really,
Wow.
really proud of myself. And they are
Oh,
very,
well, you should be.
yeah, they were very thick, but they were very good. So I was happy. I was like, my husband was like 4 hours to just a plate of pasta. I was like, yeah, but I've made them, from scratch with my hands. I cut everything, so I can definitely understand. What's the favorite, your favorite dish for cooking?
Oh, like I said, I do enjoy Malaysian food a lot.
Okay,
So I do like experimenting with different produce here,
yeah,
like vegetables and like meat or whatever, and trying to adapt that to a Malaysian style of
yeah,
cooking. Because Malaysian food is very spicy, sweet, sour, has a lot of flavors going on. So
okay,
I always like to just see, can this vegetable be, made to a certain
yeah,
curry or a certain paste that kind of represent Malaysian flavors.
nice.
So far, fingers crossed, everything has been quite tasty.
Oh, nice.
So,
Okay, what's the one that you thought would not go well and went actually quite well?
oh, courgettes in curries. So
Oh,
because,
courgette.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, so Malaysian curries are different than the curries that you get here.
Why?
It just technically has a little bit more of a flavor profile.
Okay.
Like there's like sour, sweet,
Okay.
salty, and spicy all in one curry.
Wow.
So I tried adapting, courgette into a curry, and I thought that it would not work, but it did. So
Oh, nice.
yay!
Amazing. I love discussing cooking, especially I think cooking is really close from during doing experiments in the lab.
Exactly.
You know, I'm not doing experiments anymore, but I'm doing cooking, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's a bit like the lab. You know, you have a protocol and you have to follow it loosely or very exactly, depending on what you want to do and your experience
Mm,
as well. But it really feels like the lab. You know, mixing stuff and then
yes.
having an experiment. Except it's tasty, while in the lab, usually you don't eat your experiments because that could really end up badly.
Correct, correct.
Thank you for explaining all that and for sharing all the stories with us. I'm really really happy about this episode, and we're close to the end. And I wanted to ask you: do you have something you want to end the podcast with, like a message, something we talked about or we didn't talk about that you want to come back on to finish the podcast?
Mm, I think I could be just saying this. It's just my own opinion of saying this, but I think I would like people in science to be more aware, or tell people, or tell children growing up, or people in high school, that there's so much of range to science,
Mm-hmm.
and science does not only mean doing experiments in a lab.
Yeah.
There's so many branches of science. Science communication is one of them. Science journalism is one of them. Doing podcasts is another branch of science. And that does not make you more or less a scientist. Because I also did get a lot of comments, like people saying that, oh, you were, doing science, you were this, you got so many awards and you did this and da da da, and then now you're doing this, as if what I'm doing now is not as up to par as like doing experiments in the lab.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that I speak about don't really know what science communication is until you tell them that, oh, all of this is actually science. I was one of them growing up, did not know that I was,
Yeah.
subconsciously doing it. So I think a lot of conversations about science communication, or different types of science, put it that way, like journalism or even doing podcasts or anything like that, different types of science should be, more exposed and made more known to everybody, so that people can make more informed decisions when they are picking, their what they want to do when it comes to their careers.
But I think science communication has been blooming also the last 10
Yes.
to 15 years. So even when I was doing a PhD, which seems a long time ago, like 15 years ago, we didn't have many science communication opportunities. You know, now you have a lot of them, and actually it's great because, you know, people sometimes say, oh, too many different things happening, but actually every community, every type of person likes different things. So it's good we have several ways of explaining science. You know, you have the formal way, like I don't know, radio, books, magazines, but you also have very quirky ways, you know, that are amazing because they are going to definitely be super well for one community and maybe not for some others, but you don't need to fit everyone. And it's growing, it's really growing, it's amazing, and I think it's definitely a job or a category that wasn't there a few years ago.
Mm,
And now it's
mm.
growing, and it's amazing to watch. And yeah, as scientists, it's good to do the transition because when you're doing science, sometimes I was the same like you. You know, that's why the whole podcast I was like, yeah, I'm the same. I feel like I've had really some of the same experiences. But you're doing science, you want people to know, you know, what's happening there because this is amazing. You have tons of stuff happening in the lab, and I think people realize that as well. It's not just about the Nobel Prize. No, it's about like all the small steps that are as
Yes.
fascinating as the big discovery because the big discovery is actually funded on lots of different small steps that are as fascinating as the big one that wouldn't exist without the small ones.
Yeah, but I think sometimes also that, institutions or anywhere, they tend to place this expectations on, their employees,
Yeah.
on, you have to reach a certain amount of value of a grant, or you need to reach a certain amount of publications in a certain type of journal. So I think sometimes, in my opinion, that kind of takes the fun out, or the passion out, away from doing science.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like what you say, it's not about the end goal.
Mm-hmm.
It's about these little discoveries that you make. But a lot of institutions are not very pleased with this small discoveries that you
Yeah.
make. They're focusing more on, like, oh, is that a paper for Nature, for example?
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not about the publication.
Yeah.
But I guess institutions, they probably have their own, index that they themselves have to meet. It's a bit more of like a business thingy now, but putting on this form of like requirements for employees to reach a number of papers published per year, or getting amount of grants per year. I think sometimes that can be quite stressful as well as academicians. Yeah.
Definitely. So we're going to end up the podcast, but I like your message that science is broader than a few subjects that we see. It's a lot of them. And you have science communication as well, which is amazing.
Yes.
And I'm really happy we talked about that in this podcast. We did science and science communication. Thank you very much for the whole episode. I've said that already, but thank you for all the stories you've shared, because I feel like a lot of things were personal and I love hearing those things because I think it can really help people knowing what you went through, what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing, and to identify maybe themselves to you and maybe be scientists or science communicators later. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Elodie. Thanks for having me. I had a really nice time talking to you and, listening to your point of view as well. This has been absolutely pleasurable.
Yeah, it was great. I will put all the links in description. Please do reach out to Magaret and feel free to ask her as many questions as you want. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's it for this episode of Under the Lab Coat. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't hesitate to rate the podcast on the platforms, to share it around, and to subscribe. Thank you!